All right, let's get to Biden making a surprise visit to Ukraine in the 1 year anniversary of me never saying that Russia wasn't going to invade Ukraine.
News this morning, President Biden making an unannounced.
I think one of the funniest things that a lot of people do on the internet is like immediately betray the seriousness of the subject matter that they're covering when it's like 1 year since Russia has invaded Ukraine. And they just immediately go, here are the YouTube people that said that Russia would invade Ukraine. I'm like, bro, what are you talking about? You think like this is your takeaway? Like you are so obviously just trying to fucking farm likes more than anything else. You know what I mean? Like you literally are just like, oh, thank God it's been a year. So now I can like, bring this back up. Who cares? Why do they bring it up? Because they just don't care about anything. They just want to farm. They just want to farm. That's it. Anyway. Yeah. Aren't you a converted tanky though? I'm gonna be honest. I don't think you know what any of these words mean. You know what I mean? Like, anyway, let's continue. People just say words that they hear from other YouTubers and then they come in here and use those words and they're just like, I got you.
Trip to Ukraine nearly 1 year since the beginning of Russia's full-scale invasion as Vladimir Putin's forces ramp up their offensive and amid concerns that China could start giving Russia significant military aid. The president is now heading to Poland to meet with America's allies. Mary Bruce is there standing by.
Taking
but
the
first,
walk
our
there.
chief foreign correspondent, Ian Pannell, starts us off. He's there on the scene in Kyiv. Good morning, Ian.
Yeah, good morning, Robin. I think this was a major show of solidarity and support by President Biden, and historic, and make no mistakes, high-risk visit to a country in the middle of this terrible war, even as Russia presses its attack.
What the fuck is this? Why did you find this account to explain this? This is literally, I mean, this is normal for the Biden team to like tell Russia that Biden is going to fucking Russia, but why did you find this is probably not the best account to cover this,
Across the country. This morning, President Biden crossing into the war zone. Unprecedented security in the capital, Kyiv, as all major roads are sealed off. Hundreds of armed police and army lining the streets. Air raid sirens ringing out as the president walked alongside President Zelenskyy. A reminder of the dangers Ukrainians have faced every single day for almost a year.
Kyiv stands, and Ukraine stands. Democracy stands. The Americans stands with you, and the world stands with you.
President Biden and Zelenskyy paying their respects at the Wall of the Heavenly Hundred to commemorate those who've lost their lives in the protest for freedom in 2014, and a place that also honors Ukrainian war dead.
Thank you very much for coming, Mr. President. It's been a huge moment of supporting the Ukraine.
As the president spoke, in the east of the country, intense battles raging, especially around the key city of Bakhmut.
Unchecked aggression is a threat to all of us.
Russian forces are now engaged in intense street-to-street battles as the death toll rises on both sides. Ukraine low on ammunition and firepower. Today, Biden announcing more military aid. Russia also looking for military support. Secretary of State Blinken warning his Chinese counterpart to not supply lethal military aid to Moscow. And this morning, the Chinese hitting back, accusing the US of pressing lies and saying it was America sending weapons, not China.
Freedom is priceless. It's worth fighting for as long as it takes. And that's how long we're going to be with you, Mr. President, for as long as it takes.
We'll do it.
Thank you.
Well, this was a defiant message today from President Biden, aimed a lot at President Putin, though, that his aim to wipe Ukraine off the map, his war of conquest, as he referred to it as, is failing. I think although this unannounced trip to Kyiv is going to rally the spirits of the nation, the president also acknowledging that current state of the battle, saying they're going to be difficult days, weeks and years ahead.
Oh, my.
Robin.
As always, Ian, appreciate your reporting.
Hi, everyone. George.
Yeah, Jake Sullivan, President Biden's national security advisor, told reporters that the White House alerted Russian officials of Biden's trip to Kyiv several hours before he arrived for deconfliction purposes. Yeah, no shit. Of course, dude. Can you imagine Russia fucking lets loose a stray rocket like they do regularly while fucking Biden's in Kyiv? Holy fuck, that's it. Is nuclear holocaust. Instant World War III. Like instant. So, of course they did that. The U.S. warns China not to even consider selling arms to Russia as it provides endless billions of funding and arms to Israel and the Saudis as they bomb and mass murder Palestinians and Yemenis. And the Western media class reports this as the height of virtue and humanism. Yeah, that's such a funny fucking... I mean, I don't think anybody should be selling arms to anybody. Let's be real, okay? That's my assessment. That's my take. But America being like, you definitely can't sell arms to anyone in this process is like, the fuck? I mean, it's yet another instance where it's like, we do that. Only we get to do that, okay? Only we get to do that. You know what I mean? The BBC, New York Times, Guardian say in unison how the U.S. has shown its devotion to peace, human rights, and territorial sovereignty by warning the evil Chinese not to sell weapons to Russia, something they would, of course, never do. Being a propagandist means living in an alternate universe. The thing that never ceases to amaze me is how all these people from Blinken to Jake Sullivan to all the scum at the New York Times and BBC who regurgitate this deranged bullshit have no shame. They just say it without even a hint of embarrassment. Their pathological depravity knows no bounds. Just look at this. The BBC, Guardian, New York Times keep posting stories about how brave American, French, and British troops intercept small arms deliveries to Yemen, which is fighting off a genocidal Saudi invasion that their Western regimes are funding and arming. Yeah. This is literally... This is straight up. Like, they are talking about how, they're intercepting the Iranian shipment of weapons to the Yemen. French forces see shipment of weapons headed from Iran to Yemen. Another dub. They write stories about how awesome it is that they're intercepting small arms sent to help Yemenis fight off a genocidal invasion supported by their own regimes. Then right after, Slava Ukraini, we have to spend more weapons for self-defense pieces, just the purest scum. By the way, they called this the free press in the West. Yes, formally you're allowed to ask Blinken and Sullivan and all these depraved scumbags any questions you like when you work for the BBC, Guardian, New York Times. But, of course, the only reason you work there is because you won't. And, of course, it would not be a fucking squirrel thread without Noam Chomsky manufacturing consent. By the way, I'm surprised that they didn't mention this, but we also give arms to the other side. Not just small arms, by the way, but like, laser-guided missile systems and refueling systems to the Saudi Air Force that we openly sell weapons to. So just remember that as well. We arm one side of the conflict and stop the other side of the conflict from getting arms. Which, of course, because they are enemies and, we are the good guys. So... Here.
This is what I don't get, because it suggests that, amateurs, people like me, are self-censoring.
No, not self-censoring. There's a filtering system.
You do not get to the position in media by openly being agitational towards the preordained U.S. hierarchical power. You do not get to Anderson Cooper's position. You do not get to Don Lemon's position by fucking openly asking the question, why the fuck are we giving arms to Saudi Arabia when they're melting fucking children in school buses in Yemen, when they're causing a man-made genocide, a man-made famine? You don't get to that position. You will never rise to the fucking top of U.S. media, especially now. Maybe back in the day, you could do a little bit of a stint, covering the State Department or whatever, and you could be a little bit more antagonistic, especially as it pertains to like domestic policy. You got the Pentagon Papers like that. Back in the day, that happened. Okay? You don't get that anymore. You only get like externalities. You'll have like Abu Ghraib, right? Which is so openly gross and insane and inhumane that like you have to fucking cover it. You know what I mean? But the underlying fundamentals of why we have to be in Afghanistan, why we have to be in Iraq will not be questioned. You can question it now, question it 20 years down the line, but immediately as it's happening, no shot. It doesn't happen like that. Okay? Just like you can't ask that question currently. Just like you can't ask that fucking question. You can't ask what the fuck's going on with the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. Why the fuck did Russia supposedly blow up their own pipeline? How did that happen? What a strange reason. What a strange way to do things. You know what I mean? Okay, I'm not going to cover that right now.
Kindergarten. It goes all the way through. And doesn't work 100%, but it's pretty effective.
When people also, I want to talk about something. I want to talk about another part of this puzzle, because Republicans also try to adorn the "we are peaceful doves" rhetoric, which Noam Chomsky also effectively puts down as well, and I will do that too. I want to talk to you about like the Ann Coulters of the world, the Tim Pools of the world, the Glenn Greenwalds of the world, as a matter of fact, that always say, why are we fighting this war in Ukraine? Why are we giving money to Ukraine? Is that a legitimate, peaceful, is that a talking point that is actually about peace? Is that actually a pacifist talking point? Or is that pure propaganda? I will give you that. I will give you my assessment in a second.
Selects for obedience and subordination. And especially, I think that...
So stroppy people won't make it to positions of influence.
Behavior problems, or if you read applications to a graduate school, you see that people will tell you he's not, doesn't get along too well with his colleagues. You know how to interpret those things.
I'm just interested in this because I was brought up, like a lot of people, probably post-Watergate film and so on, to believe that journalism was a crusading craft and that there were a lot of disputatious, stroppy, difficult people in journalism. And I have to say, I think I know some of them.
Well, I know some of the best and best-known investigative reporters in the United States. I won't mention names because I don't want to, whose attitude toward the media is much more cynical than mine. In fact, they regard the media as a sham, and they know and they consciously talk about how they try to play it like a violin. If they see a little opening, they'll try to squeeze something in that ordinarily wouldn't make it through. And it's perfectly true that I'm sure you're speaking for the majority of journalists who are trained, have it driven into their heads that this is a crusading profession, adversarial, we stand up against power, a very self-serving view. On the other hand, in my opinion, I hate to make a value judgment, but the better journalists, and in fact the ones who are often regarded as the best journalists, have quite a different picture, and I think a very realistic one.
How can you know that I'm self-censoring? How can you know
I don't say
that
you're
journalists
self-censoring. I'm sure you believe everything you're saying. But what I'm saying is if you believe something different, you wouldn't be sitting where you're sitting.
I mean, it's great. Of course, it's a lot of people in media fucking despise that because it kind of strikes at the core of the problem, which is you wouldn't be in that position that you're in if you were truly contentious to the powers that be. If you were truly covering, things that you are not supposed to be covering, then you would not get to the position of interviewing people. You know what I mean? You wouldn't be a fucking host. Anyway, so let's talk about dude, this is so funny. Isn't Noam Chomsky a lib? He's a libertarian. Chomsky, the first thing I do in the morning is read the New York Times. It's the best newspaper in the world. You want some general sense of what's going on? That's where you go. I mean, he's not wrong. That's still true. The reason why we're hypercritical of the New York Times, especially as it pertains to State Department propaganda, is that because it's like literally it's supposed to be the gray lady. That's the point. I tell you this all the time. When I am skeptical of mainstream media narratives, notice how I never talk about certain narratives that like the right wing is hyper focused on. Okay. There's a reason for that because I understand that the underlying material interests of why the New York Times is covering certain stories over others is sometimes valid. Okay? It doesn't mean that like everything that they, every moment, every letter that they ink on the fucking paper is literally false. Okay? It's not riddled with falsehoods. It's not. And you have to get the news somewhere. And they do a profoundly important thing, you know, Associated Press, New York Times. It's just that when you're consuming it, you have to be critical of what you are consuming. You have to be a little bit better with your understanding of what their perspective is, where their biases lie, okay? And the unfortunate reality is that, like, there is no... Media literacy, unfortunately, is not taught in a Marxist sense. You will never learn media literacy from a Marxist perspective because you're going to a neoliberal institution of learning. So when you learn about media literacy, you're learning a liberal understanding of media literacy. A literal understanding of, or a liberal understanding of media literacy means you just fucking look at the New York Times and you say, this is correct across the board. It's always good. It's infallible. It is the most moral and most correct way to approach stories. Okay? And that's not true. There are plenty of instances where they fall short. What are some key points of leftist media literacy? Always look to what the underlying material reasons are for why certain stories are covered with certain perspectives. One thing that I can give you, it's like building biases basically, but if you want to understand like how an article is covered, always look to what sources they're covering. For example, when you talk about police brutality, I mean, I say this all the time. It's not just the New York Times. It's not just NPR. It's all of mainstream media, that outlets that you consider to be otherwise very good outlets, right? When people cover police brutality, they always go to the police. When people cover police brutality, why the fuck are you going to the police? Why are you asking other former policemen, police chiefs, and people that work for, security contractors and whatnot, what their perspective is, when you should be only talking to victims' families, okay? And you should only be talking to like public defenders and activists. But they don't do that. They talk to police officers. They talk to ex-police officers. They talk to police chiefs. They talk to people who still have contracts with, police departments all around the world sometimes. That is a bias. Why do they have that bias? Because they work in line with the police. They are defenders of capital. Police protect and serve the interests of capital, and so does the New York Times. So whenever there's an issue of police brutality, their job is not to put it on the paper and give you the actual fucking truth of it and tell you exactly what ways to modify or fix the problem. Their job is to normalize that violence, and sometimes normalizing that violence also means looking at the tip of the iceberg and saying, that's abnormal, but that's very different than the rest of the violence that continues on a daily basis as police operate like occupying forces in black and brown neighborhoods. This was a very apparent thing that I tried to pummel into your fucking brain when we were talking about the Cobra unit, right? With the execution of Tyree Nichols. Everyone immediately rushed and said, these 5 cops, they're bad. And the second thing that they said immediately after that was, or not Cobra, sorry, Scorpion unit. I apologize. I fucked it up. It's another comical 80s fucking supervillain named unit. It was the Scorpion unit, not the Cobra unit. But they did that with a purpose. They immediately banished these 5 cops as though they were like totally operating outside of the boundaries of normal policing when they clearly weren't. Okay? And that's something that you need to remember. They were operating within the boundaries of normal policing. It's just that, it was on camera and it was pretty gruesome. So they had to make it seem like this was totally different. That's why they went to other cops and they they asked them, like, is this normal? And all the other cops said, no, in all my 30 years of policing, I've never seen that. No, it wasn't just because they were black. Stop. We're talking about something that is more important than black or white, okay? Because there is one additional layer. Ask any black person and they will tell you, when you are a cop, okay? You're not a black cop or a white cop. You're a cop. You're working for a white supremacist institution, whether you agree with it or whether you even recognize it or not. This is not colorblind Andy. This is straight up just the truth. According to James Baldwin, sometimes black cops are even more brutal than white cops, just to prove that they are, that they are not black, but blue instead. Okay? Anyway. So, that was a brief lesson on manufactured consent. We're going to move away from that. And we're going to get to Bernie Sanders, who claims to be a socialist, but wrote another book. Disgusting. What a liar, dude. What a Weasley little fake socialist, dude. Socialist, but writes a book? I think not.
Start with Senator Bernie Sanders.
If anyone knows anything about socialism, socialists hate writing books. They hate writing and reading in general. It's like a big no-no. I'm very smart. What? Nah, he's cool. This guy cosplays as Yujiro Hanma and DBZ characters to entertain his son. Oh yeah, this is... Yeah, this guy is crazy. I've seen this guy a lot. He even has a demon back, dude, kind of. This guy's dope. My TikTok just suggested this to me. The caption was just Sigma. Oh, I forgot. We're going to talk about the conservative critique of war. Good fucking call. Thank you. Before we get to Bernie Sanders and him being a fake socialist, one last thing I wanted to say about the war in Ukraine. A lot of people regularly talk about how much money we're fucking sending over to Ukraine, and some of the perspective is valid. But a lot of what conservatives talk about with respect to why or how much money we're sending into Ukraine is just bullshit. What do I mean by that? Always make note of people who say, why are we sending this money to Ukraine when we can instead be using it elsewhere, and what they are saying? Because if they are like, why are we sending this money to Ukraine? Why can't we beef up our borders? Or if they're Marjorie Taylor Greene and they say, why are we sending this money to Ukraine when we could be bombing Mexico? Which is a thing that Marjorie Taylor Greene said. Or Ann Coulter saying, why are we sending this money to Ukraine when we could be invading Mexico like we did with Panama? A real thing that she said on the Tim Pool broadcast. I saw that earlier this morning on the Majority Report. Shouts out the Majority Report. Remember, when people say, why are we sending this money to Ukraine when we can be using it in other violent ways? Yes, she did say that, by the way. Both of these things I said are correct. Okay, let's see if we can, maybe you guys can send me the links. I know Marjorie Taylor Greene said it. I know Ann Coulter said it on Tim Pool. Understand that they're not anti-war, okay? They're not anti-war. Because they're just saying, that's not a good war to fight. We got a better war to fight. And if you are anti-war, you don't say shit like that. And this is basically what Glenn Greenwald advocates for as well. They're not anti-war. They're anti-this war. Okay? So remember that. Here it is. Marjorie Taylor Greene says, President Trump was right. We should bomb the cartels because they are an international criminal organization murdering our people by lacing deadly fentanyl from China in drugs they illegally sell across our border to U.S. citizens, not Mexico or its great people, the cartels. The Biden admin and U.S. Congress has invested 111 plus billion taxpayers' dollars in a war defending the borders of the people of Ukraine. The same admin and Congress ignore our own daily border invasion and the record high number of Mexican cartel fentanyl murders of Americans. Washington has always had a lust for war. If that's the case, they need to turn their lust towards a war that actually defends America's borders and the American people's lives. But Joe Biden is the best business partner the cartels have ever had, and Joe keeps the drugs flowing. And young Americans, teens to 45, are dying of fentanyl more than COVID, cancer, heart disease, and all other deaths combined. This is so funny. That's not true. What the fuck? That is insane. Okay, let's continue. Joe doesn't seem to mind drug abuse because he campaigned for POTUS while his daughter Ashley was in drug rehab, writing about inappropriate showers with dad. And we all know the depravity of Hunter's drug habit. Unfortunately, we had to see it on his laptop from hell. But just because Joe Biden doesn't care how many Americans die from fentanyl, why don't the rest of the demon rats care, and some Republican senators? You know who does care? The parents who find their teenager dead in their room in the morning. That family remembers, that gets that call that no one ever wants. And each time the toxicology report comes back, fentanyl. Our own federal government is failing our people, and by keeping our borders open, aiding in the cartel's murders of our people, it should not be tolerated. The federal government has a duty to defend the state's borders and our people, and it's the people who pay for it all. I'm Marjorie Taylor Greene, and I believe that we need to have a national divorce, kind of like the divorce that I had with my husband because I was cheating on him with the CrossFit instructor. That's right. That is a real thing that Marjorie Taylor Greene, did allegedly. I was letting the whole team hit because, I wanted to explore my sexuality. Now, am I having sex with Kevin McCarthy? Some people are saying this. This might be a lie told by the liberal Democrats. Allegedly, I, Marjorie Taylor Greene, am having sex with Kevin McCarthy. Allegedly. Anyway, we need to have a national divorce, kind of like the Confederates did, but this time successfully. By the way, that's not even a lie. She wrote that. Here it is. We need a national divorce. We need to separate by red states and blue states and shrink the federal government. Everyone I talk to says this. From the sick and disgusting woke culture issues shoved down our throats to the Democrats' traitorous last America policies, we are done. That's right. We need to balkanize the United States of America, more like the non-United States, the divided states of America. I'm Marjorie Taylor Greene, and I know nothing about American history, and I will tell you that this will probably be a good thing. Hud says, maybe we don't need a national divorce. Maybe we and the government can just live in other places for a while until we figure things out. Maybe things will get better. Yeah, I agree. Anyway, here is the funniest part about Marjorie Taylor Greene's absolutely insane request for Biden to bomb drug cartels in Mexico is the fact that it was his idea actually first. Let's go after the drug lords where they live with an international strike force, Jack. Super predators, I mean. Why? They don't call him Jim Crow Joe for no reason, chat. Okay? I do find that funny. Anyway, yeah, Marjorie Taylor Greene, no fucking unique or new ideas. You know what I'm saying? Biden met President Zelenskyy and all the Ukrainians. Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene pops off, says, impeach Biden or give us a national divorce. We don't pay taxes to fund foreign countries' wars who aren't even NATO allies. We aren't sending our sons and daughters to die for foreign borders and foreign democracy. America is broke. Criminals and cartels reign, and you are a fool. That's funny. She got so horned up to fucking pop off. She just said allies, and then she said to dies for foreign borders and foreign democracy. Do you think she's aware that blue states literally prop up red states to keep their people alive? Is she just saying virtue signaling, or is she that stupid? Yes, she's that stupid. Why not both? Why not both? It could be both. Why not both? You see the drama over the communism comment in the new Last of Us? Same foreign policy as you? Wait, what? I'm literally describing why this is an idiotic fucking take as far as foreign policy goes. And there are still people in here to be like, yeah, dude, you and Marjorie Taylor Greene agree. Marjorie Taylor Greene very openly admits that she is not interested in like any sort of peace mission. She just wants the funds and the weapons to continue flowing just to travel a war that she thinks is good. Here's why you can never trust the false anti-war positions of the right. Ann Coulter and Hannah Claire Brimelow propose pulling funding out of Ukraine and instead use it to invade Mexico.
Travel at all, go anywhere, and you will be happy to be here. Do you think that Mexico poses enough of a threat to American lives to be worth invading at any point?
It wouldn't be necessary if we built the wall.
Yeah.
But yes, to take out the cartels, I mean, it's certainly more of a threat to us than Ukraine.
Right. I mean, we sent a ton of money shipping goods and resources to Ukraine. Why wouldn't we just spend that money on the wall?
Well, not only the wall, but as for, going into their country, I mean, I don't know, this is kind of racy, but yeah, take out the cartels if they can't do it by themselves.
She follows through by literally saying we should do a Panama Canal style invasion, which, she doesn't even know the details of, doesn't even understand who she's talking about. It's pretty funny. Anyway, it's great. It's fucking awesome. It's just, yeah. What is this? The Last of Us communism clip? Yeah, I know. It's funny. It's only funnier because like Pedro Pascal himself is like a supporter of socialists, which made it even better. But his character's of course like supposed to be like a right-wing guy, right-wing Texan guy, rugged man. There's more gun deaths in Mexico come from gun manufacturers in the United States. I guess Mexico's a pretty compelling reason to do some strategic strikes in the USA. Yeah, good luck to that. Okay, here is Ron DeSantis saying the same shit. By the way, this is now going to be the new right-wing talking point. That's why, get ready for this.
First, on the president's unannounced visit, is this a good move?
Well, Brian, I'm reminded of when he was vice president. Obama and Biden opposed providing lethal aid to Ukraine during those years. And then I'm also reminded that I don't think any of this would have happened but for the weakness that the president showed during his first year in office, culminating, of course, in the disastrous withdrawal in Afghanistan. So I think while he's over there, I think I and many Americans are thinking to ourselves, okay, he's very concerned about those borders halfway around the world. He's not done anything to secure our own border here at home. We've had millions and millions of people pour in, tens of thousands of Americans dead because of fentanyl. And then, of course, we just suffered a national humiliation of having China fly a spy balloon clear across the continental United States. So we have a lot of problems accumulating here in our own country that he is neglecting.
First things first, on the president's unannounced visit, is this a good move?
Well, you know, Brian, I'm reminded of when he was vice president. Obama and Biden opposed providing lethal aid to Ukraine during those years. And then I'm also reminded that I don't think any of this would have happened but for the weakness that the president showed during his first year in office, culminating, of course, in the disastrous withdrawal in Afghanistan. So I think while he's over there, I think I and many Americans are thinking to ourselves, okay, he's very concerned about those borders halfway around the world. He's not done anything to secure our own border here at home. We've had millions and millions of people pour in, tens of thousands of Americans dead because of fentanyl. And then, of course, we just suffered a national humiliation of having China fly a spy balloon clear across the continental United States. So we have a lot of problems accumulating here in our own country that he is neglecting.
First things first, on the president's unannounced visit, is this a good move?
Well, you know, Brian, I'm reminded of when he was vice president, Obama and Biden.
Little Rhonda, meatball run. DeSantis downplays the threat of Russia poses to other countries. Of course, Aaron is gonna like fucking not let that happen. And to point out, I mean, you know, the fear of Russia going into NATO countries and all that and steamrolling that is not even close to happening. I mean, that part is true, by the way. I don't know why like liberals make it seem as though Russia has this capability when they're getting their shit pushed in like the most destroyed eastern Ukrainian towns by the Ukrainian army that is being funded by the rest of the planet. So, you know, good luck to them going into a fucking NATO country. Okay, come on.
Is those woke approach to crime and law and order and being...
Okay, I can't, yeah. Little Rhonda! It's not about capability, it's about the Asiatic horde narrative. Yeah. You don't have to win to cause immeasurable damage. This is true, which is why I originally had that famous take that I had that was wrong. But, you know, of course, that never happened.